We're back again, week 2 of another episode of Strange New Worlds. And I'm gonna cut right to the chase here. This is Star Trek. As I said in the previous episode review, I was surprised that it wasn't bad. And this time, I am less surprised. Now, I've got some caveats here, so let's jump into it. What are we looking at for episode 2, Children of the Comet? Once again, spoiler alert, actual spoilers. Here we have another super run-of-the-mill classic Star Trek premise. We have a comet threatening a civilization. We possibly have a little bit of prime directive issues here as to whether or not the civilization should be saved, but they want to do that, and this is again something with great precedent that we've seen before. But things get complicated when they discover that the comet is not just a comet, but a living machine of some kind. I don't want to get too deep into the details, that's for you to see. Now, this isn't unprecedented at all. As a matter of fact, we had a somewhat similar episode of Discovery and many similar episodes of Next Generation and the original series. So once again, we are treading in familiar waters to get ourselves used to what's going on this show. Now, hopefully we don't constantly and only tread in familiar waters, and that they branch out eventually. And hopefully it won't be too long before they do that, but for right now, they're keeping us safe, they're playing it safe. And it's in this episode we finally discover that the Uhura that we have here is the Kelvin version of Uhura. She's not the Uhura from the original series and the movies, she is very much a different, one might say retconned Uhura. Now, do I have a problem with that? Not enormously, because I hate to say, the original Uhura did not have a very strong purpose in the show. She was not enormously talented, she was a decent character, she was fine. But this time around, they're giving her some extra skills. And honestly, I feel like this character is partially copied from another character we know from Enterprise, Sato, someone who is brilliant with all languages, and the original Uhura certainly was not. We already knew that. But we're settling into this new version of Uhura. I'm mostly okay with that. And one weird throwaway moment that I thought was going to come back, and maybe there's a deleted scene about this, as they're getting in their spacesuits, they get inoculated by Nurse Chapel against cosmic rays. Cosmic rays pass through almost everything, and generally speaking, unless you're like right next to a star or a supernova, the amount of cosmic rays does not vary. And so she says, you're being bombarded with them, they'll turn your insides into mush. Without this inoculation, it'll only last a little while. You can't inoculate against cosmic rays unless you've got like nanites going through your bloodstream. What a bizarre thing. And they're putting on spacesuits, which perhaps these futuristic spacesuits might actually protect them from cosmic rays. That would make sense. What the heck was the point of that scene? Completely bizarre, and the whole scientific part of science fiction kind of broke down there for me. Now, once they are down on this alien asteroid, we get Uhura pushed into the forefront to try to figure out how to solve the issues that they have at hand. And I kind of didn't like the fact that they just said, hey, you work on this and we're just gonna wait around. A little weird. I feel like Spock and the others probably would have still been searching the cave, searching the surface, using their tricorders, trying to find a way instead of just twiddling their thumbs and hoping someone doesn't die in the meantime. And then when Uhura does figure out how to trigger this device, we have some music playing, and it's supposed to be alien music, but it is highly reminiscent of Star Trek themes from the past. That's cute, but I feel like they probably should have come up with something a little more alien, a little more original. And I feel like they were trying to give us a little nod there, and it was both unnecessary and probably inappropriate to try that. And in this episode, we do see some space combat, but thankfully it is combat that happens when there is no other course of action. They had exhausted diplomacy and things broke down, and the battle of strength, the test of strength in the firefight in space was not the chief conflict in this episode. It's just something that something that happened, but it was not a deciding factor. It was the minds and the choices that decided the outcome of this episode. That's fantastic. I love that. I also love that although the aliens on the spacecraft were religious zealots in nature, we didn't end up in the end poo-pooing on their religion. Everyone escaped this episode with a sense of viability, a sense that they all could have their own standing, they all could be right in their own ways, and that there was actually a sense of mystery at the end, which is something very classic Star Trek and something that a lot of showrunners don't want to do anymore these days. They want to either drag you out in a clear direction to find what's in that mystery box, or solve all their answers right from the get-go. But here, in a classic Star Trek fashion, we don't know where that asteroid came from, we don't know where it's going, we don't know its purpose, and there is no clear path that we will ever get back to that. It is episodic in nature. And so that's fantastic. I love it when they leave us with some mystery, which is something that happened a lot in the original series, not as much in TNG, but it's a classic Star Trek trope. I love that. We don't need to make this a binging show, but we can leave some mystery because it is a huge universe that they exist in, so that's fantastic. My last criticism is the portrayal of Spock. In the previous episode, we had some somewhat problematic things, and in this episode, I find that his portrayal is still a little bit inconsistent. Now, we're only in episode 2, so I've got to cut them a little bit of slack here. Altogether, he seems to understand metaphors too well and understand similes and cultural references, whereas the original series Spock, he never got that stuff. He kind of caught on a little bit later on, but he already seems to be on a human cultural footing, more so than he was later in his life in the original series. So I feel like they're having a lot of trouble figuring out how to put this Vulcan into his niche. And altogether, the new Trek genre, they don't seem to understand how to portray Vulcans very well, which is kind of unfortunate. Now, again, we're on the second episode. I hope they can figure that out. It's not a huge issue. For the most part, I still like this Spock more than the Kelvin era Spock, but we're still not quite there yet. I'm going to give this 8 handsome captains out of 10. I am enormously pleased. Now again, this was a bit of a vanilla episode. No big surprises, no changing the script at all. Everything was very expected and very standard Star Trek. And I'm okay with that. But it's not blowing me away, but at the same time, it is greatly pleasing me. I am super happy with the direction they've taken the show. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, because previous New Trek has shown it has very little understanding for Star Trek, but they seem to understand where they're going with this. And historically speaking, I really have to cut them a break, because previous Star Trek series, like a lot of the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, even Enterprise, a lot of the time when they're first starting out for the first, second, sometimes even third seasons, they don't really know what they're going to do with the show, and they don't figure out how to really manifest it in a fantastic way. And these days, people don't expect shows to do that anymore. It's got to be 100% right from the get-go, but it's always been a very Star Trek thing to kind of find their way in the universe, so to speak. And hopefully this show continues to grow and continues to lead us into strange new worlds. But fantastic, I can finally say that this is Star Trek. It's been a while. It's almost surreal. Let me know what you thought about the second episode of Strange New Worlds down in the comments below. But until next time, we'll catch you later.